Hi, Paige. Freaking Malia. Malia. Okay, students. Where's my mace? Shift if you need to be able to see. We have DBQ number 5 tomorrow. Alex has his phone set for us to have like a little bit of an alarm. You have one too? Yeah. So that we can talk like the last 15 minutes or so about the DBQ again. Paula, I want to make sure I also address for you like the not getting finished part. So make sure I discuss that, because here's what you should know though. Like, you guys, you don't have to have, Johnny, can you go that way? You're trying to get points, right? Like, you're trying to get points. So watch. How is it if you get a 4 out of 7? Again, it's really like a 4 out of 6, right? What's that percent? What's that percent? 2/3, which equals what? 66, 67%. On an AP exam, is that good or not good? It's actually perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine if you get a 4 out of 6. What's the one that none of you need to attempt? I don't care if you attempt it. If you're doing excellently, then you should and could attempt it. But otherwise, I don't think you should really worry about it, because you have to do 3 what? What's the one I don't need you to try?
Perspective.
Yeah, the happy. Historical context, audience, purpose, point of view, and then why. All of those would have to have a because after them. But again, to justify their actions, to support someone, to deny that something happened, all of those infinitives, are you hearing me? The infinitives are what you would use for that for purpose. But, ready? In class, context, EBD, and then also happy is historical context. So I was just talking to Mackenzie this morning. Who else was in here with me? Were they in the other class, Viola? Yeah. In the other class. But watch, listen carefully. When you get the prompt, read the prompt, see what the prompt is about. And I strongly recommend you turn your paper over to the back of the docs and then just brainstorm and dump your head out and try to put as much information that you can think of. Are you hearing me? Don't look at the docs yet. It said Industrial Revolution, and I want you to what? Bam. Go, brainstorm. 2-minute drill, write down everything you can possibly think of. Then when you get to the docs and it talks about this and it talks about that and it talks about that, you can cross it out. But what's left, what does that equal? It equals your contextualization in the very beginning. It could equal EBD, and it could equal context in the actual essay. So it is really, really significant for you to write down all of those things that you can possibly think of. So my point is if you are struggling to get finished, right? At least you also with the time, is that right or no? No, you're fine with the time. Who else is the time one? Right. So you're struggling to get finished. 4 points is 4 points. Most of you are going to try to get contextualization, 4 points, 4 major points, 3 to 4 major points, about 50 to 75 years before, and then you're going to get the thesis. Everybody has to have a great thesis, right? That says exactly what the paragraphs are going to be about. And then you're all going to try to get your 7 docs and doc citation and then support for your thesis. Does everybody hear me? However, if you're having a hard time getting through that, what's the 5th one that I didn't say? EBD, evidence beyond the doc. It's also basically just contextualization. What you didn't put in contextualization, what? You can put here, we're going to look at that black hole of Calcutta today. The black hole of Calcutta is why the Battle of Plassey happens in 1757. Yeah, put it somewhere where we have India. The black hole of Calcutta is why the Battle of Plassey is going to happen in India. And in 1757 is when the British, because of the black hole of Calcutta, because of the Battle of Plassey, the British are going to basically take over, the British East India Company are going to take over all of India. They're going to start taking over then with the support of the British government and soldiers from the British Army, not to mention sepoys who are Indians who are going to fight for the British. And Indians are Muslim and they're Sikh and they're Hindu. and they're going to fight for the British. Why would they do that? What? They get a good salary. It's a good living. They can make a good living doing that. All right. So anyway, my point is that you have to try to write down all that information. So Paula, we're talking about you or Mason, and you don't feel like you can get all of that down, then go for different points. Get the contextualization, get the thesis statement, and then only care about analyzing 4 docs. 4, so that if you do one wrong, what? There's one extra to make sure. And so I still say analyzing them, not describing them, because that will still only be 1 point for describing them. But you do contextualization, you did your thesis statement, and then you cared about one paragraph. You cared about one paragraph and made sure that you had 4 docs or 2 paragraphs and made sure that you analyzed, what the easiest docs that you can analyze, and then EBD. And then another, which is like contextualization, and then EBD. That's 1 point for contextualization, 1 point for thesis, 1 point for analyzing 3 docs, and 1 point for EBD. Who understands what I'm doing there? What are we doing? It still could be a 4, but you're, instead of trying to have all 7 docs, what? You're just trying to focus on the 4 easiest ones. How many of you that is a good plan? Do you understand? Because contextualization and EBD are the same thing. Contextualization happens where? Before, 50 to 75 years before, and then EBD is everything that's sort of relevant about your essay and using the EBD. So you could do that. So why did I want you to analyze instead of just describe? Because she's like 45 minutes deep and she's given me contextualization, she's given me a great thesis, and she's given me the good paragraph or 2 that has the 4 docs. Why do I want her to have it analyzed? What can she do now? She's like, oh, I'm actually finished. Go do at least 2 other docs. Go then and be like, oh, well, let me go try to add these 2 other docs and try to get the 3 points. Who understands what I'm saying? Right? So there's different ways to approach it. Like if you are having a hard time with time, getting enough time to be able to do it, then reevaluate which points you're trying to get. Right? Okay, any questions? We're going to talk about it at the end of the block. Do you understand what I'm saying though? Okay. We'll talk about it at the end of the block. Rationals for imperialism. What is the root word of imperialism? Empire. Put it down if you don't know. The root word of imperialism is empire. Imperialists are trying to create what? What? Answer me. Empire. Trying to create the empire. It's we are from 1750 to 1900 now. By the way, from 1780 to like 1910, 1915, World War I, they sometimes call that the long 19th century. The long 19th century. They're talking about the 1780s to 1910. So all of the 19th century, the 1800s, but a little bit of the 1700s and a little bit of the 1900s. They call it the long 19th century. And this is the empire of high imperialism or new imperialism. What was the first imperialism? What? No. Imperialism, empire. Who were the first people that sailed over the ocean sea for empire? 1492? Columbus sailed the ocean blue. The Niña, the Pinta, the Santa Maria. What is it? Spanish and Portuguese. Got it. So that's old imperialism. You can put that down because that is also could be EBD. Old imperialism is the Spanish and the Portuguese, the Dutch in the 1600s. The new imperialism is in the 19th century. It's also called high imperialism. It is exactly the 19th century. Old imperialism is in the 1500s and the 1600s. That's old imperialism. All right, go ahead. Nationalist motives for imperialism. Nationalism, nationalism, nationalism. Who did I tell you has unifying nationalism? They're like, yay, us. Germany, France, Britain. How come? Because they're all British. They're all German. They're all French. Who has a divisive nationalism that's trying to pull them apart? Because they all want self-determination. Ottoman Empire called the sick man of Europe, and Austria-Hungary has 10 different nationalities inside of Austria-Hungary, and they're just trying so hard to keep them all unified. So those two you've got to know. You've got to know Ottoman Empire and Austria-Hungary, because we're heading toward World War I, and that matters that they have divisive nationalism, and it matters that Germany, who's going to be blamed for the war, has a unifying nationalism, and Britain and France. By 1870, can you guys see me? By 1870, European nations began creating transoceanic colonial empires focused on parts of the world not already dominated by Europeans. It is a land grab, it is a land grab, it is a land grab. Why are they racing all over the earth? We now have factories and we have industrialization. Why are they racing all over the earth to try to claim lands that weren't claimed? So they can have the natural resources. They can rape, rob, and pillage them. What are they going to not let them do? Manufacturing, factories, industrialization in their countries. Why wouldn't they let them do that? Because it is make them strong. Like who's the most famous example of not white people?
In Japan.
Japan. What's it called? Don't answer all the questions. The Meiji Restoration makes them an imperial power. They're called the Empire of the Sun, or sometimes Empire of the Rising Sun. Empire of the Sun. Go ahead. Militarists, hoping to project global power, and nationalists seeking power and prestige, encouraged imperialists. So the military is a very fundamental part of going to take over other places because of social Darwinism. What's social Darwinism say? It is survival of the fittest, but who's the fittest? The people with the biggest guns. If we bring Mason and Nia out here, Nia's going to kick Mason's butt because, of course, she's the strongest of the two. Maybe not. Maybe Mason will be able to take Nia. But that's Darwin. Do you guys remember? That's Darwin. That just the strongest would survive. Because there's plenty of stronger people in other places until you add what? Gianni's like, screw those people. I'm just going to shoot them all. Right? I'm just going to shoot them all. Like, you guys are idiots. Why in the world are you fighting each other? Like, this is a lot easier. So, right? So the smartest, the most technologically advanced is survival of the fittest. You have to know it's called social Darwinism. If you don't have it written down, make sure you do. Because that's a very significant part of empire building, is that all the British and the French and the Germans and everybody else, what? They're going to come in with the most significant weapons. We already talked about the Gatling gun, and what's the one where the bullets go like this through the gun? The Maxim. M-A-X-I-M. Put it down. The Maxim gun. Go ahead. Technological superiority, machine guns, quinine, telegraph, steamships made conquest of the new colonies feasible. Whatever happens, we've got the Maxim gun, and they have not. Quinine. Does anybody know what quinine is? It's massively important. Quinine is what gin and tonics are. Have you heard of a drink called a gin and tonic? They're actually, I guess, supposedly pretty nasty, right? What's the alcohol part of that? The gin. But the tonic is actually, I guess, quinine, and apparently it's a very bitter thing. And so building the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal and going into all of these places in Africa and India and everything else, what's killing everybody? From? Mosquitoes. Guess what the mosquitoes don't like? Quinine. Right? And quinine is going to be part of this gin and tonic. So people started drinking gin and tonics. Why didn't they just drink the tonic? Because it tastes nasty. Right? It's all bitter. So they would add gin to it and they're like, okay, that's better. But that changed everything, because what was dropping the British and the French